OPB Podcasts.
From the Gert Boyle studio, it's OPB Politics Now for Thursday, July 24th. President Donald Trump entered office with some big plans to crack down on immigration, and he wasted no time. Trump has spent his first 6 months back in the White House using broad executive orders and aggressive raids, deportations, and other actions to send a clear message on immigration. I should note that some of these decisions have been challenged in court by Oregon and other states, but a lot feels unprecedented and unpredictable. And that's leading to fear and confusion among immigrant communities. That's certainly the case in Oregon. Today, we're looking at how federal immigration policies and decisions under this administration are impacting the lives of Oregonians and how advocates, lawyers, and the courts are stepping in. Welcome to the podcast. I'm OPB Politics reporter Alex Zielinski.
I'm OPB Legal Affairs reporter Conrad Wilson.
And I'm OPB's Public Safety reporter Troy Brynelson.
Okay, so I remember right after Trump entered office, there was a lot of rumors flying around about ICE picking people up off the streets in Portland and in the suburbs, and a lot of those were unfounded. But that changed last month. Conrad, you reported on a woman who was picked up outside of immigration court in Portland. Mm-hmm. Remind us what happened there.
So the person, she's identified as OJM, which is a pseudonym. She's an asylum seeker from Mexico, and she says that she was sexually assaulted by members of a drug cartel because she's transgender. She's been in the U.S. since 2023 and really followed, all of these terms that immigration officials put on her, like these regular check-ins. She had to say where she was living, and she complied with all of that. And so in early June, she attends this hearing in immigration court in Portland as part of her asylum case. It's this required hearing. And during that hearing, the attorney for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security says that they want to dismiss OJM's case. Often, at least historically, that's a good thing because it means that the government's no longer seeking to deport the person. And OJM, during the hearing says, well, I don't want to give up my asylum claim. I want to stay. I don't want to have to go back to Mexico. But as the hearing kind of progresses, OJM basically agrees to have the case dismissed. And so this, asylum claim that she made at the border, it is done. And so she walks out of the courtroom and immediately she's arrested by several officers with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And they bring her to this massive detention facility in Tacoma, Washington.
So Trump campaigned on promises to go after violent criminals, but many people who have been detained appear to have no criminal history or current charges, much like OJM. That was her case, right? Yeah,
and attorneys for ICE had a number of different legal positions they ended up taking, after OJM was arrested. Initially, they argued that she should have never been let into the country at all and was subjected to what's called expedited removal and had to be detained. Later, their legal positioning kind of started to change again. But what's interesting is by dropping OJM's initial asylum case and then re-arresting her, the federal government effectively moved her from kind of this slower, more deliberative asylum claim process into this, much faster process, expedited removals, which, has far fewer protections. One thing to remember is that OJM went to court for this hearing. And, had she not, that too would have been another reason or justification for her arrest.
Mm-hmm. They're weaponizing due process against people and creating an impossible situation where compliance with the law is met with a deprivation of rights.
Anand Balakrishnan is a senior staff attorney at the ACLU's Immigrant Rights Project. He was outside when we spoke to him, and he didn't know anything about OJM's case specifically, but he was aware of these arrests happening all over the country.
But in general, what we're seeing is that people who have been in sort of normal removal proceedings and reporting for their hearings and court dates are being immediately detained, either like after their hearing, either in the courthouse or outside of it. And we've been seeing it sort of across the country.
Okay, so in OJM's case, though, lawyers and the courts have intervened to kind of pump the brakes on her deportation. Can you tell us where things stand today?
Yeah, so after 43 days in detention, a federal judge ordered OJM to be released. The judge, U.S. District Court Judge Amy Baggio, acknowledged that the federal government, has these sweeping powers over immigration. But she says when it comes to OJM's specific case, they didn't follow their own rules. And Baggio even went so far as to say the government really tricked her into dropping her own asylum case, kind of, as you mentioned, like a bait and switch.
And I want to be clear, just because OJM is released, that doesn't mean that she's safeguarded from deportation in any way, right?
Yeah, it's a temporary pause. There's no promises. I mean, it sounds like one thing OJM could do is try and appeal the dismissal that happened in immigration court back in June before her arrest, kind of basically reactivating that original claim, which, as an asylum case, like she has a very strong claim, according to legal experts I've spoken to.
Sure, yeah. Well, Troy, I want to pivot to something that you've been following, another seemingly unusual practice, which is people being detained at Customs and Border Patrol offices. You recently reported on a family being held at a Border Patrol station in Washington near the Canada border. Before we get into what happened, what can you tell us about the Merlos family?
Yeah, I think this really speaks to just the various ways in which immigration is being meted out right now. The Merlos family, unlike OJM, was, like you said, detained at the border by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. This is a family that we're talking about a mom and a dad, 4 kids, all under the age of 10, and also in this particular instance, a grandmother. They've lived in Portland for more than 2 decades, and they're business owners, they're homeowners, and suddenly we get word at OPB that they'd been detained for 2 weeks and had not had any contact with the outside world while they were there. I should be clear, that was the father in that case was not detained, but this is the family. They were just an everyday family. They're very active in their community. We've heard from friends and family about how they're really active in the church. So, like people in the community. Right,
and the last folks that you'd think. And what do you know about how they landed in detention?
So what we've heard is that the mother in this case, her name's Jackie Merlos, she and her mother, who is from Honduras and on a travel visa, they decided to go up to, with their 4 kids, up to the U.S.-Canada border. There's a park there where people have been holding rallies and convening to protest Trump's deportation policies. But in this case, they went up to see Jackie's sister, who happens to live in Canada. What we have heard from Customs and Border Protection, they're accusing them not of visiting a sister at a park, but of, in their words, smuggling somebody into the United States. And so at some point during this visit, they were taken into custody. And I think I mentioned a second ago, they had no contact with the outside world. A lot of people did not know where they were. Jackie texted a family friend, though, while she was in the process of being detained, that was just like, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm being detained, I need help. And the father in that case was not present, but shortly, within days after detaining Jackie, her mom, and her kids, Carlos, her husband, was picked up outside of their home in Portland.
Wow. But the courts have intervened now. Where's the family now? What do we know?
Right. So it's interesting because the dad was taken to the Northwest Processing Center in Tacoma, and he had access to an attorney, but Jackie, her mom, and the kids all being held at this facility in Ferndale, Washington. And
no access to an attorney.
No access to an attorney, unable to communicate with her husband. The legal specifics here are interesting, though, because CBP was making the claim that Jackie had signed a document basically saying, I'm going to leave the country voluntarily. And when their case became public knowledge and they were finally able to get access to an attorney, when they were pressed by immigration attorneys to produce this document, they never did. The immigration attorneys filed for a temporary restraining order, basically emergency, halt all proceedings, do not produce the document if you're going to actually deport this family. And the judge basically agreed, said, don't do anything. We're siding with the family. To this date, as far as I've reported, CBP has never produced that document. So long story short, they were able to, after that judge's ruling, the kids were released, and the mother, Jackie, was taken from CBP custody into the Tacoma facility, and now she's going through the more traditional immigration proceedings, not this whole, you're going to voluntarily leave. I should note, though, the precariousness of the situation is that when the kids were released, a family friend named Mimi was able to go and get them, and they were actually at Seattle Tacoma International Airport with new passports, preparing to leave the country. That's how close the situation was.
Wow, wild. And the grandmother, is she?
The grandmother was taken into the Northwest Processing Center in Tacoma, and so all three of these adults are now just on the same sort of deportation track.
Jeez, what a roller coaster. And so, Troy, this is just one of two stories you followed of people being held at Border Patrol offices near Canada. Do you have a sense of why this is happening?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you mentioned earlier about how initially the policy was that they were going to go after the worst of the worst. And we know that's just not the case anymore. They're going after people who aren't accused of violent crimes, people who've only violated immigration law coming into the country. So they've been increasing the number of arrests. We have seen an uptick in detentions coming from the northern border. We've reported or we've seen reports of people getting caught crossing from the state of Michigan or the state of New York. And in this other case that we talked about, this family that I reported on in May, their crime, so to speak, was that they were asylum seekers in the U.S. and they thought that they had to self-deport. So they went up to Canada hoping to try and seek asylum there. And instead, they were caught up at the northern border and detained for, in that case, almost a month.
Jeez. What has really seemed to resonate with people about these cases is that they just seem like average people being targeted, like the family you mentioned, often in ways that are so disruptive to families. That was the case, Conrad, when you reported on ICE arresting a dad outside his child's preschool in Beaverton last week. It's a pretty shocking example. Can you first tell us a little bit about this man and his backstory?
Sure. So Mahdi Khan Babazadeh came to Iran from the U.S. on a student visa in 2017. So legally, and that's actually something ICE agrees, everyone agrees on that fact. He's now a chiropractor. He's married to a U.S. citizen. They have a young child. And the family told me Khan Babazadeh had applied for his green card. They recently sat through an interview with federal immigration officials as part of that process.
But that didn't seem to stop ICE from tracking him down, right? Tell us what you know about his detention.
So we've only seen a small portion of the arrest that played out over the course of about 25 minutes or so. It happened on the morning of July 15th outside the Guidepost Montessori School. And I guess we should just kind of walk through these video clips that we got that were shared with us. We were able to verify them. This first clip we're going to hear is when ICE stops Khan Babazadeh. You're going to hear the ICE officers. You're going to hear Mahdi and his child who's in a car seat in the back.
Happy party.
Just go ahead and roll your window down. You're in the window. Roll it down.
Roll your window all the way down for me, please.
Yeah.
Do you have your ID on you? Please.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, can I see your ID?
Yeah, that's funny.
Where are you heading?
Daycare.
And so from there, ICE actually lets Khan Babazadeh take his kid to school, something they noted in their statement. And in this next clip, it appears he's in a different location. He's waiting with his kid still in the car, so that someone can bring the kid into the school.
There's a baby in the car.
I understand.
And is it hard to wait for 3 minutes?
And this next clip, I'll just say it's intense. About another 10 minutes or so pass. And what you're hearing is you're going to hear actually ICE break the window of his car. And I just want to also say that his kid is no longer in the vehicle when this is playing out.
Hell, hold on. I'm getting out. I'm getting out.
Well, you should have done it
on.
already. I told you 3 times. Unbuckle your seatbelt.
Yeah,
Step out of
but
the
you
car.
still understand.
Step out of the car. You're
Okay.
under.
And they place him under arrest. As for ICE, they didn't comment on the video itself. A spokesperson says that they ended up, breaking the window of the vehicle there because they say that Khan Babazadeh stopped cooperating. He was resisting arrest, refusing to get out of the vehicle. His family has disputed that, saying he was complying. And, the basis for the arrest, ICE says that Khan Babazadeh actually overstayed his student visa. But again, his family has said that, that was never the case. He's in this green card process. His status has changed. He's always been in the country with a legal status.
And just to go back to that last bit of tape too, when the glass was breaking, you said the kid was no longer in the car. Was he taken by family? Is he safe as well?
Yeah, the kid's fine with mom basically, but
Okay.
The kid's fine and was not in the vehicle when the glass was breaking.
Got it. So he was stopped outside of his kid's school, which just kind of adds to the shocking nature of this, right? You have all these kids watching. This is pretty unusual, right? I mean, for ICE to show up at a preschool and arrest a dad. I mean, tell us a little bit about the context there.
Well, it's actually, it appears to be reflective of a policy change the Trump administration made at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
For years and actually even decades, ICE has had what they call sensitive locations. It's kind of this guidance where, except in extreme cases where there's someone who's violent, an imminent terrorist threat, that kind of thing, ICE has generally avoided enforcement outside of hospitals, clinics, schools, courthouses. These have been facilities that are sort of sensitive locations. And so earlier this year, like I said, the Trump administration basically got rid of that policy. Now, the Department of Homeland Security did tell us in a statement a few months ago that agents are supposed to get permission from a supervisor if they are going to do kind of enforcement in one of these sort of places like outside of a church or that kind of thing. And a spokesperson for ICE would not tell us basically if those protocols were followed in this instance in Beaverton.
Sure. And this certainly doesn't seem like a high risk person or scenario, at least from the information that we have. So you've been tracking ICE arrests in Oregon. I'm curious kind of how they square up against other states when we're seeing immigration raids in Washington, California, elsewhere. How does Oregon compare?
It's a good question, and it's unfortunate that we don't have like the most up-to-date possible data.
Sure.
I think the best data comes from this project called the Deportation Data Project out of UC Berkeley. They've been FOIA requesting and gathering this data, and what their data shows is that there have been about 231 arrests in Oregon from the beginning of the year to late June, and 817 in Washington state during that same time period. And that data does include Inauguration Day and before, and it likely doesn't encompass, like I said, all of the arrests. Some of the data is incomplete. It's a little bit flying blind sometimes, trying to keep track of how what kinds of the amounts of arrests that they're doing.
I mean, what we do know is, Oregon, Washington, compared to past years, arrests are definitely up. And that's just, with pretty incomplete data and only for, part of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm sure more data is going to be available. So we're going to leave it there for the day. Troy and Conrad, thank you for your reporting, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
This week's episode of OPB Politics Now was recorded live in the Gert Boyle studio. It was produced by Ryan Haas, and our audio engineer is Stephen Cray. Our music comes from Audio Network. In these uncertain times, we are certain that you have questions about local politics. Maybe we can answer them. We would love to hear from you. Email us at opbpoliticsnow@opb.org. We'll be back next week with more political news from across the Pacific Northwest. Until then, you can find all of OPB's reporting at opb.org. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening.